You are in for a treat today on the podcast. I have Cindy Watson, who is been on the podcast before. We will link her very popular course on early intervention, and her daughter MC. They are sharing their autism journey. We talk about autism in girls quite a bit here on the podcast, and I have had people on who are autistic adults who have been diagnosed later in life and maybe had different diagnoses growing up, and then they get an autism diagnosis, and it really kind of makes things clear for them as far as what is going to be helpful and what is going to be a support. So thank you so much to Cindy and MC for sharing their autism journey with us. MC has autism. She's an autistic individual, and Cindy Watson is her mom, and she's an ABA Speech Connection member. She is an amazing speech language pathologist, business owner. I could go on and on. They are a breath of fresh air, and MC is really going to share with us what that journey was like for her. I did ask her, what did you find helpful about therapy? What did you not like about therapy? Because I try to have that ongoing communication and open dialogue with my clients. And so this will be a peek into what does your middle school student like about therapy? What do they not like so much about therapy? And how can we help support them on their communication journey? This is a great episode. Let's get on into it.
You're listening to Autism Outreach Podcast, a podcast full of ready-to-use strategies to help those with autism strengthen their communication skills. Here's your host, Rose Griffin of ABA Speech, a speech therapist and board-certified behavior analyst who shares tips you can use in your next therapy session.
Welcome to the Autism Outreach Podcast. We have a great show for you today. We actually have a repeat guest, which we don't have that often. So I'll have to make sure that I put your other episode about early intervention on our show notes. But we have with us Cindy Watson and her daughter, Mary Claire. She goes by MC. Thank you so much for both coming on the show.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
And Cindy has been in my membership, the ABA Speech Connection. Thank you, Cindy, for being a founding member of my membership that I offer CEUs for speech therapists and BCBAs. And actually, Cindy, I probably haven't even shared this with you, but we are, by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be up and running, but we are actually opening a parent space that will be dedicated just for parents, where we are going to offer new tutorials every single month about very specific parent-friendly topics, and also have a parent who is a BCBA and raising an autistic child come on and do a Q&A that is specific to parents, because I feel like while my information is helpful, I want to have somebody who is really kind of in that journey and helping navigate other parental questions. So I'm excited about that. So welcome, and thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. And so today we are going to talk a little bit about your journey into, I guess, the autism world. You've been supporting autistic learners as a professional, and I know that MC has been diagnosed with autism, and I just was wondering if you or MC, in sharing kind of that journey. We have talked about autism in girls here on the podcast, and I've had autistic adults on to share that actually all the autistic adults that I've had on were diagnosed as adults, and they had other diagnoses growing up and weren't getting the proper support, and then were able to get a diagnosis as an adult, and that really kind of changed things for them. So share with us what you feel comfortable sharing about that autism journey.
Well, Mary Claire and I had discussed that what we were going to talk about, and I'm a strong believer in we walk roads for a reason and to help others and to share our story. And I went to her and said, would you feel comfortable talking about it? And she would, and she stated that she would. And I love that, because I feel like things in that aspect have changed as well, with especially teenagers sharing these kinds of things. But as her mom, and being a speech pathologist for almost 29 years, when I had Mary Claire, I'd had another child, and I knew normal developmental milestones from my job and from another child. And Mary Claire was always on the tail end of of normal or she was late. Her gross motor was probably the one that was most affected, and maybe because she lived at home with the speech pathologist 24/7. But she didn't walk till almost 2. And so she did physical therapy through early intervention. As you mentioned, that's a passion of mine is early intervention. She did some OT for sensory things. But I, being her mom, I guess it was about 18 months that I realized, things were really different. And being a speech pathologist, also, people would comment, she's so well behaved. She plays so quietly off by herself, all that. And I was like, I know these are the things that are concerning to me. And I actually was telling her on the way home from school today, I was reminiscing her preschool and daycare teachers still work at the preschool and daycare that we own. And I was talking to them last week, and they were like, she was always the easy kid. She played off by herself. She didn't get into arguments with the other kids, and she was a terrible sleeper. And so she would lay quietly on her cot. They were like, she would just lay quietly on her cot if we gave her, books to look at or whatever her things were. And so those were always my concerns. But we went to a daycare where she started at 8 weeks and went till she was 5. Till they till they kicked her out and made her go to kindergarten.
Right.
And then she went to a neighborhood school where she was so familiar with the kids, because a lot of the kids from the daycare preschool went there, or kids from church, or kids from the neighborhood, and everybody just knew that's MC. So there wasn't any kind of figuring a lot out in that kindergarten through 5th grade year. And then COVID hit, and we were home that last part of 5th grade. Let me back up here. We never were tested during this time. She was tested for therapies, and the only thing she qualified was for OT and PT. And everybody kind of thought, oh, mom, just thinks everybody's autistic,
Right.
because of what I do. And it was just, I've heard a speaker one time, a continuing ed speaker, that said, like, mom's gut is like 85% accurate, which I think is a pretty good, that's got pretty good reliability, right?
Right.
But so we had that lockdown, and then she switched schools. So she left everything that was familiar. And then that August, she went to middle school. And that was when we really saw her start to fall apart, because 6th grade, there's so much social. And it's a new place, new teachers. Plus, we had never, like, as parents, my husband and I, we had never been in that school building. We didn't know any of the teachers. Our other daughter went to a private school at 6th grade. So, like, for all of us, it was new. And I think she's so intuitive. She knew, like, we were like, oh, goodness, this is all new. And so that was when, like, the social part was so important. And that, like I said, was when she fell apart. And they came to me and they were like, have you ever had her tested for autism? And I'm like,
oh,
are you for real?
Wow.
And so the school, actually, an amazing speech pathologist there, like, amazing. I would love to hire her at my clinic, because she just was like, she was just so great with Mary Claire. She did such great social skills, pragmatic things with her, and like just paired so well with Mary Claire. And like Mary Claire felt safe with her. So she didn't get her diagnosis till 7th grade. 6th grade, the end of 6th grade, sorry. It was like the last day of school, wasn't it? But Mary Claire was going to share kind of, so that gives you like my background. Like we had all those things, like she hated for us to wash her hair. I mean, screamed bloody murder when she was little.
sensory.
And we would draw straws or flip coins, anything, because it was like, no, it's your night, because she hated that kind of stuff. The doorbell, I mean, would send her, and a lot of people come through our garage just because it's just the way our neighborhood is, and our family comes in through the garage. But when the doorbell would go off, it would trigger her, and she would be like, it would just send her into like a crisis, like what's happening. Also smells, like we would go to the florist, I can think of one time in particular, we were going to get flowers for my mother-in-law for Mother's Day,
Mm-hmm.
and we walked in and she immediately threw up.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
gosh.
but the smell, she was so, and she's still very hypersensitive to smells.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, it's okay, you know. And of course, she was like at the age where that was scary, or,
Yeah.
but now she can communicate that with us. But she was going to share with you some of, like, as she was growing up, some of the things she experienced.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I would love to hear that. I think that anything you can share would be really helpful for other parents and therapists.
I just know whenever I was younger, and like this goes back to like the washing the hair thing, like
Yeah.
I felt really like tender-headed and I didn't like having my hair pulled because I
Yeah.
felt like it was getting ripped out.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
then like anything loud, like even today at school, like I got a little bit triggered by like someone yelling
mm-hmm.
and like the doorbell, automatic toilets. I used to run out of the church bathroom because they had automatic
I forgot
toilets.
about the automatic toilet till you just said that. One of the teachers that I was talking to her last week, she really helped us with that. She was like, just put a paper towel, like when you go in the public bathroom, grab a paper
Yeah.
towel and put it over the sensor. We thought, we're never going to
Oh,
get her to go potty out, you know, out in
yeah.
public. And so then she could go out and I could go in and pull the paper towel, you know.
Oh. Do you have
Yeah.
to kind of wet the paper towel with water? I'm like really getting down to the nitty gritty, but I feel like the paper towel would stay better if you kind of damped it, wouldn't it? And then you put it over
Yeah.
the
You
sensor.
know, we never did that, did we? We
It just
just kind of
stays?
laid it
Okay.
over there.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's been several years ago.
Right. I
Yeah.
feel like
And
that's a
then,
pretty common. Just remember a kid at a clinic I worked at. I was not working with her, but the psychologist was, and it was all about automatically flushing toilets. And it was like a
yes,
really big, for her, it was like a fear. It wasn't just sensory, it was
yes,
kind of like a fear. And so that is actually a good tip. I thank you for sharing
yeah,
that. But I do think if you could, the kid could independently do it, maybe if they kind of damped it a little bit and then put it
yeah,
over the sensor. Yeah. And then use
yeah.
the restroom. And then you're like, okay, I know this is going to happen. And maybe that would be easier to,
And she did get to the point where she could pull it when she was all done and
yeah.
she was dressed and up,
Hmm.
she could pull it herself. It was just kind of maybe
Yeah.
what you're saying, like that feeling of, you know, you're kind of vulnerable because it's like it's loud and there's a
Right.
lot of a lot of
You
things.
don't expect it.
Yeah, you don't
Right.
expect it.
Never happens when you think it's going to. You're like, what
Yeah.
happened there? What not was it
Yes.
done or like what's going
Yes.
on? For other people, it's kind of
Um,
like, oh, okay, that was weird, but yeah, it could be jarring. Okay, that is a great tip. I'm not gonna lie, I've never
I
heard
know, you
somebody.
know, those daycare and preschool teachers, they know how to survive in the wild,
Yes,
you know,
right. Oh
as
yeah.
I
Oh
like
my
to
gosh.
say.
Okay,
Yes.
that's a good
But
tip.
yeah, you were going to talk about too some like just with the kids and
I was going to talk about smells and
yeah,
tastes.
do that.
Whenever I was younger, I would hate like wet cereal, like if it had milk on it, like it would make me gag
Yeah.
because it was just like soggy
Mm-hmm.
and like I hated like squash and cucumber because of like
Gooey.
yeah,
kinda.
the gooiness of it.
Yeah, it's
And
squishy.
then smells, like I still don't like smelling flowers.
Yeah. And you're pretty sensitive to smells. And like she like it's funny because one of her favorite places is Bath and Body Works
Oh,
to go there.
really? Okay, I was just there. Big fan. Yes.
She loves that, but
Yeah.
like it's like not nice. I mean, like flower. You know, when you go in a floral shop, it's kind of a combination, or like the cologne part of a department store.
Yeah.
When it's all mixed together, it's like
Right.
it really
Wow.
hits her hard.
Yes. So sensory.
But
So have you worked with an occupational therapist on those different types of things, or anything? Has anything helped, or just with getting older? Do you think it's easier to navigate those kind of sensory concerns?
I have worked with an OT, but also getting older has helped
Yeah.
because like I now got like what to do and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. So what about, so working with have you worked with a speech language pathologist? And I'm just wondering, like, what was helpful, what was not so helpful? As a speech therapist, we're always wondering, and I do ask my older clients. I worked in middle school, high school for 10 years and I loved that. But you always kind of wonder, like, what did they like about or could tolerate about speech therapy at that age? And what was not so fun, if you feel comfortable sharing.
I probably liked like talking, like, cause like growing up, I had like a lot of like restricted interests.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like this time, like this period where I'd only talk about dogs,
Mm-hmm.
and then but like the speech pathologist that I worked with would like incorporate that in and talk about what I liked.
Oh, yeah.
And so like it was easier to get me to talk.
Mm-hmm.
But I probably didn't like getting thrown into like group sessions as quick as I did.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I just, number one, I wasn't like ashamed of going to speech therapy, but like
Yeah.
in middle school it's just kind of embarrassing to like still go to like a speech therapist because everybody's like, isn't that for little kids?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she really struggled with, for lack of a better term, bullies when she was at the middle school because she was like, Mom, they were like, isn't speech therapy for, and I apologize for using this word, but for the stupid kids. And it was
Yeah.
like, oh, hurts my
Yeah,
heart because I know as a mom and as an adult and as a speech pathologist, we all have our weaknesses and we all
Right.
have our strengths. Like Mary Claire's super smart and just loves to learn about, different things, not necessarily always the things. Like she's very musical and likes to talk about instruments and music and composers. And so
Yeah.
her interests are different
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay. Like if we were
Right.
all the same. And so there was a lot of the mental piece or like the emotional. Like I talk to my students a lot about, like, I feel like I've had to become more of an expert in the mental health component
Mm-hmm.
because when they get to this age, it does do a number on their mental health. And, I mean, we're pretty much, like I said, we like to use our information to help other people.
Right.
And so we've done counseling and things like that,
Yeah.
just because, not just coming from mom, but like, it's okay,
Mm-hmm.
like it's okay. And don't get down on yourself. We all have things that we need help with. But yes, it was, groups are very hard for her. Like she was missing first period a lot. And we were like, what's the deal? Well, we have to work in groups. Well, so her her function of behavior was escaping
Yeah.
because she was like, I don't want to work in a group.
And not first
So,
thing. It sounds like a mess. Yeah. That was in middle school, high school. I tried to see the kids, like kids that were on grade level, but just need a little social help. I was actually able to kind of see them. How I would set up my services is I would see them actually individually, and then I would go into their classroom and not say one word to them. And I would just sit back. If it was like a science lab, I would see how they are like generalizing their social skills, or I go in and kind of peep on them at lunch and, try to be more naturalistic. I think that's a good thing to talk about with, it's hard because as a speech therapist, if you have an IEP, you do have to get those IEP minutes, right? It's
yes.
a
Yep.
legally binding document, but we want to be, and I did like my old building for that because I had a very small office and it did not say speech therapist on the outside. It didn't say one word. And I just think kind of being discreet as you get older, and it's not like you're ashamed or anything like that. It's just, I guess, serving the kids in a way that makes sense for middle school, high school, because it's such a hard, I have a middle schooler now. It's just a hard age to navigate. I mean, you're just finding out who you
Right.
are, and everybody needs help with something. And yeah, bullying is hard. And, thank you for sharing that, because that, brings it to light. Like it's, sometimes you'll see on Instagram, like autism is a gift. And, it's not that it's
Yes.
not, but it's just there are struggles. And so thank you for coming on and sharing about that, because I feel like it's not discussed.
Yeah.
It's not
And I
discussed
have
enough.
some students, honor students, who are working on a thesis about girls and autism because
Oh,
now that we've gone through this with Mary Claire and how long it took for her, because she was able to mask things,
Mhm.
and like I said, because she is so smart, and I say that not just as her mom, I know, but like she wasn't one of those kids that needed a lot of extra help on academics. So she
Mhm.
flew under their radar, and she was quiet. She didn't want to talk to anybody because of her social anxiety or her
Mhm.
social skills not being up to par. And so the students have become interested in trying to help figure out what is that missing link on why girls are going longer, or dig in deeper.
Mhm.
There's so much stuff out there. And so that was what interested me about sharing our story. And talking to Mary Claire, we just talk about it now. And like today, I mean, she was telling me like kids just openly talk about it. She's in a smaller private school now.
Yeah.
And I love that it's not so much a stigma, but it's almost like you have blue eyes. Well, I have,
Right. Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And
Also, there's like negative parts of it being talked about so much because like it's like a big joke now.
Mhm.
Like someone will get a question wrong when the teacher calls on them and they're like, "Oh, are you autistic?" or
yeah,
Oh.
R word.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we don't use the R word. She said, or the R word.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right.
And so there is some of that, but
Right.
I do appreciate that there is more of like, I think that helps that on that mental health piece that you don't have to feel like you have to hide it or be embarrassed about it. It's like
Right.
one of the characteristics that makes you.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I love that. This has been so interesting. Thank you so much for both coming on. As we kind of wrap up our episode, I really appreciate you sharing your journey with us. I think that I try to have autistic adults on and, autistic individuals and parents who are raising autistic children, because I think sometimes as speech therapists and BCBAs, we can't always ask the questions that we want to. If you're working in a public school, you can't always ask the parent, like, are you happy with speech therapy services? Because
yeah.
I might say no. And
Yeah.
that gets to be a hard question. But thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else that you guys want to share kind of in summary, Cindy or MC, and wrapping up our episode today?
I was just going to share something that may make her chime in, but right before Christmas, she surprised her dad and I, and she got to go up on stage for the band concert
Oh.
and introduce the song, and you had to talk about the composer. I about fell out of my chair because it's like all the band parents from 6th through 12th. I don't know. There
Wow.
was probably
Like half of our because it's a church.
it's
It's
a
like
church
half of
school.
the church.
Yeah, so
Wow.
I'd probably say like 500 people. She got up there, and her eye contact in my little speech pathologist heart was like about to explode. And she had a big voice, and my dad only has hearing in one ear because of
Yeah.
his age. And he was like, I heard her better than anybody else up there. So she had a big
Aw.
voice. So I think that would be our encouragement, saying like, it is hard. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we still have struggles here
Mhm.
and there, and we're working through it. But I think like, as I look at this little sign on my desk, it's like one day at a time. It was something my mom taught me growing up to
Mhm.
take each day and don't try to look way, way ahead.
Yeah.
But like, that's what we look at is like today, what are we going to do today? And don't worry about tomorrow. And I know other people have things, but one day at a time is kind of our family thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just super proud of how far she's come. And like I said, it's not perfect. We definitely have our big roadblocks and hiccups, but to encourage other families and just advocate for your kiddos.
I was probably just gonna say that like being in like band helped me a lot with my
Mm.
social skills because it's like it's a bunch of people who have like the same interests as me, so I can talk more freely than like
Yeah.
being in like a math class
Yeah.
Mhm.
where like it's a bunch of random people put together.
So it may be encouraging parents to find out what their kids are interested in,
Mhm.
which, yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Cindy, and
Okay.
thank you,
Thank
MC,
you.
for coming on the show. It was really great to connect.
Okay. Have a great night.
Thanks for listening to Autism Outreach. If you enjoyed the show today, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode full of actionable strategies you can use in your therapy room. Write a review too. That would mean so much to me. I always love hearing from you. Have a specific topic that you want included on a future show? Reach out over on Instagram, ABA Speech by Rose, or visit me at www.abaspeech.org.